All right. Hey, everybody.
Hey,
Good
there we
evening.
are.
Yeah. Hey, we are running a little bit of an experiment tonight. As you guys know, we're preparing to begin having a worship here in our building in just a few weeks. We hope that the first week's going to be June 7th. And so we're trying to prepare some systems so that we can have the best experience for
Yeah.
both people that come and gather it for that here, and also for those who need to watch, stay home and be, social, a little bit more socially distant for a while. And so we're trying out some new systems to make sure that we're prepared for that. We hope you guys will forgive us for using you as guinea pigs tonight a little bit.
Yeah, but it may even be better than normal.
It,
I am so loud
let's
right now.
just assume it's going to be better
It
than
will be.
normal. Yeah, I think that would be ideal. So we are gonna have our class here, just like we've had for the last 5 weeks until tonight. This is our sixth time
To have it here, yeah.
So we're going to continue that series in just a moment. But before we do, tonight we're gonna have a song, and so we invite you to sing along and just enjoy a moment of worship as we have this. As we have this song together. Okay, so we're going to switch over, and Riley and I are going to turn our mics off because we're going to sing
That's
along
right.
too. But we're going to keep our singing to ourselves while we do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and shift over to that song, guys.
Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. You are good. Good, Lord, you are good, good, Lord, you are good, good, Lord, you are good, good, Lord. Let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good, Lord, you are good, good, Lord, you are good, good, Lord, you are good, good, Lord. You're never gonna let me down. 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 You are good, good, Lord. You are good, good, Lord.
All right. So there we go. So tonight, Rylan,
That was neat.
We're in, I want to talk about a different song here.
Okay.
In just a minute, a very familiar song. Okay. And I'm going to read the place in the Bible where that song shows up. And did you look already?
No,
You didn't look at where my
I
Bible
haven't
was?
looked.
Okay. All right. Great. Because I want you to guess
Okay,
where it is.
you read it to me.
In
I
just a
won't
second.
look.
All right. Here is the song that I want to talk about. It's oh yeah, I'm not telling you.
Okay.
All right, here it is. I'm going to sing it to you.
All right.
I'm out of breath because I had to run upstairs while that was playing.
Yeah, it's not on the website. That's the problem.
Yeah,
that we're not
we'll get
streaming
that.
on the website right now. If you're trying to get there from the website, you can't hear me, so it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
why, how are you going to
I don't know.
that?
I'm not sure. I don't know what I was going for there.
Okay, all right, so here we go. The song is, you want me to sing it or read it? I think I should sing it.
Yeah, sing it to me.
The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. I can hold it forever, baby. I really can. Therefore I will hope in him. All right, buddy.
Okay.
So that song is a very familiar song, right?
Yeah.
All right. So what song? Where is it from? Do you know?
My first guess would be Psalms. It's one of the Psalms.
That's a very, very good guess.
Is that not right, though?
It is not correct. It is not correct. If you know, hey, if you're watching and you want to try to guess in the comments about if you know where that's from in the Bible, then I would welcome you. I would welcome your guess. We'll see if you guys have it right.
Mm-hmm.
And before we reveal that, okay, let's do a little bit of reviewing about where we've come from so far.
Okay.
Because what we're doing is don't look. Did you cheat?
Maybe.
Rylan?
I thought it was. I won't tell anyone.
All right, so we're doing the story of God
Yeah.
as it shows up in Scripture, and kind of doing an overview. We talked about how a lot of times we look at Scripture in like tiny little pieces, little microscopic, just a verse here or there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then other times, it's good for us to kind of pull back and see the whole story laid out. Kind of look at from above and see
And
the
I think
whole
we
timeline.
tend to do that less. We
Yeah.
tend to focus more on one book or one chapter.
Right.
I mean, we feel like we're doing a good job when we do one book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's important though because when we come back out, we actually understand those little pieces a little bit better, right? Because
Yeah.
we understand the context of where they are. And of course, it works the other way too. When we kind of dig deep and we understand those little pieces, hopefully they help us understand, the
story.
bigger picture
Yeah.
too, right? So it kind of goes both back and forth. But that's what we're doing in this exercise is we're looking at the broader picture. And so where did we start?
Okay, well, we started with creation at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Uh-huh. You're going to take the easy ones, the C's, aren't you?
Creation.
Uh-huh.
Wait, I think they're all C's.
They are not all C's.
Yeah.
They are most certainly are not all
Creation,
C's.
Creation, they get cast out, or corruption,
Corruption, yes. Yeah.
and cast out.
Yeah,
That's the same
that's
thing, cast
right.
out of the garden.
Yeah.
Covenant.
Wait, let's back up a little bit. So
Whoa.
creation, everything is made.
Yep, everything's created
And
by
it's
God.
Yeah, and it's a place of, the world is full of life.
Mm-hmm.
Humanity has a vocation.
We get our vocation.
Yeah.
We are, we have some similarities and some
Yeah.
differences with the rest of creation.
Yeah.
Right? We talked about that.
Yeah.
And
And we're meant to like bless the world,
Yeah.
there's a blessing on the world too.
bless the
God does
world,
it.
take care of it.
Okay, so that's-
dominion.
Creation, and then we have after that corruption, and what happens to this beautiful creation that God has made to be full of life?
Eve eats that apple
Yes.
and gives it to Adam,
Yes.
and that
yeah.
dummy eats it,
Uh-huh.
and they get kicked out of the garden.
That's right. And so there's this story of how God's beautiful creation becomes marred and corrupted
Yeah.
by human sin. And we talked about how, that corruption story is more than just what happens in Genesis 3.
It continues.
It's this broad story. So we kind of see the corruption thread developing, and there's more and more sin and violence and disobedience to God. And that creates all kinds of problems for creation. And so God takes an approach to address all those problems. What
It's
is
the reset button.
Yeah, the reset
He
button.
floods everything.
That's right. That's right. But after that, what does he do after that? What's our third C? We're ready for it.
Oh, okay. He has a covenant. So he makes a covenant with Noah
Yeah.
first, with the rainbow, that he's
That's
not
right.
going to flood the earth again.
Uh-huh.
And then he calls Abraham.
Yeah.
And does he in the middle there? Does he mix up all the languages? With the
Yeah,
Tower
that's
of
right.
Babel?
The Tower of Babel. Yeah, it's right before.
Okay.
The Tower of Babel is right before
Right
the
before
Abraham
Abraham.
story.
Yeah. So then he calls Abram and makes a covenant with him, and that's the big covenant.
Yeah, and
That's the-
Abram is told that he's going to be like kind of this key to blessing for the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. Then we have the rest of Genesis, kind of like lets all three of those themes kind of play off each other. Right. We
Yeah.
have creation, the stories of creation, stories of corruption, and stories of covenant. that kind of intertwine through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Jacob's children, especially Joseph. Okay,
Yeah.
and then we have a break
Yeah.
of 500 years. Okay, under which time the people are enslaved. So we're ready
Yeah.
we're ready for movement number
Yeah.
4.
So Joseph takes them there,
Yeah.
right? He
Mhm.
brings them all to Egypt,
Yeah. Mhm.
and then there's just a big gap of
Yeah.
500 years where they turn into that family into like the numerous
Yeah.
stars in the sky
Yeah, that's right.
type of civilization that they
That's
have.
right. That's right. They become
Right.
a people. They become more
Yeah.
than just a family. They become.
So part of the
Just like
covenant's
family.
being fulfilled
That's right.
in that, right?
Right.
In during those 500 years, and then they're in trouble because they become enslaved.
Yeah. They are.
So-
They're enslaved by Pharaoh. Pharaoh, this
Yeah.
character who kind of represents kind of this great power that enslaves Israel. Okay. And so, what movement comes after that?
They're catapulted out.
Oh, that is not
Of
it, Ryland.
Egypt.
Come on, that is ridiculous.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What Ryland means to say is the Exodus, the Kexodus.
There's
is
another
what you
word
might-
for
you might as well just
Exodus
call it
that starts with the C.
That is not true. Okay, so it is the Exodus. Well, if you can think of one, then you're welcome to put these together. But if you're that willing to distort the truth. So the Exodus story, God rescues his people, but he also is like shaping them to be a nation, right? Shaping them to be a people. So because they haven't had that formation yet. You're right. They become numerous, but they're greatly unformed.
Yeah.
Okay, and so they go to meet God at out after they're delivered from their slavery in Egypt. That's the Exodus proper, right? But the rest of the book of Exodus tells how they go to meet with God at Mount Sinai, and how he kind of renews the covenant with the people, but also like tells them what it means to be God, his people. Like teaches them a law and gives them a law and gives them a way of understanding, what it means to be faithful to him, right?
Can I go down a rabbit trail really fast?
Sure.
I just thought of something,
Yeah,
and it will be 5 seconds. It'll be over.
I don't.
Isn't it amazing that the Israelites were in Egypt for 500 years and they remained a people? Like
Yeah.
they didn't just disperse out and become Egyptians.
Yeah, that's right. They retained.
How did that
they
happen?
retained some
Like I
identity.
would like
Yeah.
to dig into like
Yeah,
the
that's
history of
fascinating.
that.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Anyway, okay.
So you're right though. But we're going to drill down into the kind of identity that they have, right? They believe in the stories of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They have that. Okay, that's what when God speaks to Moses in the burning bush, he kind of calls on that identity. I'm the God of your father. I'm God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, right?
Yeah. So they've passed down those stories like oral traditions.
Yeah, they have some understanding of that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the ethics of the kingdom, they don't really know that yet, right? And so they get to receive that at Mount Sinai, and then after that, okay, there's this crisis like about whether they're going to go into the promise, whether they're going to die because of their idolatry, how quickly they break the commands of God. Oh, it could be commands. It's not, but it could be. After they do that, there's this moment where they then transition to becoming not just a wandering people, but
Civilization.
a kingdom with a K.
Or civilization with the C.
Civilization, man, that's ridiculous. I like it. Okay, I'll give you that one. Okay, they become a civilization. Yeah, I mean it's stretching it a little bit, but why not?
So one thing that it goes back to technical stuff. One thing that is harder right now is that we're not able to see
Okay.
the comments as well,
Yeah.
and so I'm seeing some people like maybe asking questions, but I'm not sure.
That's okay. We're about to come to that.
Okay.
Because
All right,
Rachel
cool.
has made a guess, and everybody's dying to know if it's true.
I saw that. Yeah.
Rachel Collins has a guess about whether what our text was from. Okay. And we're almost there, but let's
Okay.
finish
All right,
civilization
okay,
first.
okay.
So
do
civilization
it.
or kingdom is like this. The people are established, and
Yeah.
they're a nation. Okay. And that sets us up to talk about this text. All right. And Rachel Collins is correct. Your prize is in the mail, Rachel. Okay. It is from the book of Lamentations. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases; His mercies never come to an end.
That was my second
They're
guess.
new
After I saw
Well,
it.
it's a poetic book, okay. But what's surprising to me about that is that text is, or that song, the way that we sing it, is so bright. And
It's not a
cheerful.
lament.
Yeah, it is a hopeful song, but in its context, it is right there. It is right there with. It's right there with the why they need hope. right?
Mhm.
It is in this lamentation. So I want to read some of the stuff that comes before that, okay, as a way of talking about the moment that we're in today, because the moment that we really want to talk about today is exile, okay? And remember, we're going to do 10 of these,
Yeah.
okay?
And
As
this
we-
is 5. This is
This is
5?
6. This is number 6.
This is 6.
Yeah. So we got
Creation,
creation,
corruption.
corruption, covenant, Exodus,
King, and then
Kingdom.
civilization.
yeah,
Okay, you're right. You're right.
and then,
You're right.
and then the exile.
I counted
Okay.
wrong.
So,
I was at 5.
so we're gonna talk about
I
good
guess it's
job,
just
Rachel.
5 C's so far because we haven't really come up with
Don't-
one for
please
Exodus.
use everybody. Don't do that. Okay, so
It's hard.
I want to read what comes before that little bit of poetry, before that bright and cheerful little song. Okay, this is what it says before it. It is. So this is in Lamentations 3, and that verse is in verse 22. So I'm going to read what comes before it.
Okay.
I am one who has seen. This is written by Jeremiah the prophet, by the way.
Okay.
Okay. I am one who has seen affliction under the rod of God's wrath. He has driven and brought me into darkness without any light. Against me alone he turns his hand again and again all day long. Now, I don't know a song about that verse.
It should be one.
Yeah, really.
VBS next year.
Yeah, here. Okay, tell me if this sounds like a VBS song. He has made my flesh and my skin waste away and broken my bones. He has besieged and enveloped me with bitterness and tribulation. He has made me sit in darkness like the dead of long ago. He has walled me about so that I cannot escape. He has put heavy chains on me. Though I call and cry for help, he shuts out my prayer. He has blocked my ways with hewn stones. He has made my paths crooked. He is a bear lying in wait for me, a lion in hiding. He led me off my way and tore me to pieces. He has made me desolate. He bent his bow and set me as a mark for his arrow. He shot into my vitals the arrows of his quiver. I have become the laughingstock of all my people, the object of their taunt songs all day long. He has filled me with bitterness. He has sated me with wormwood. He has made my teeth grind on gravel and made me cower in ashes. My soul is bereft of peace. I have forgotten what happiness is. So I say, gone is my glory, all that I had hoped for from the Lord. The thought of my affliction and my homelessness is wormwood and gall. My soul continually thinks of it and is bowed down within me. And then it transitions. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. And then we have our little verse.
Mhm.
The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. Now, we tend to just sing that part. Like, that's the part that we have the song about. But all of that poetry that goes before it. Do you hear? I mean, there's some pretty vivid stuff in there, right?
Well, I mean, you don't hear this stuff about God. God doesn't do that stuff.
Right, and
What?
yeah, but there's this
is-
anguish, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of turn our eyes away from the moments of anguish sometimes, but the Bible doesn't flinch from those.
Mhm.
Okay, and in ancient Israel, there was this one particular moment. Now, the Exodus was this moment of triumph, right? But just like there was this moment of triumph, there was this moment of great sorrow too, of utter anguish, of desolation. And it's the moment that Lamentations is written about, and it's the exile. And what the story is basically is that around 600, okay, and in
BC.
yeah, there is a time frame where the Babylonian Empire basically just destroys the land of Judah. Now, the northern tribes had already, we talked about the division,
Assyria got them, right?
Assyria wiped them out
Mhm.
in the 8th century, the 700s, okay? But when we get to 600 and then what happens immediately after that up to about 586, okay, we have the Babylonians come in 3 different waves and they just demolish Judah. And when they do that, they take people captives. They take all the like nobles and the elites of the land, the merchant classes. They take them all into essentially slavery again over to Babylon. Okay.
This is like
they destroy the temple.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego,
Yeah,
and Daniel, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, they're part of the group that's taken into captivity. And so, what happens though is that as that story develops, it shatters Israel's understanding of themselves. right? The kingdom, the exodus to kingdom was the way that they thought of who they were before God. They were the ones who had received a covenant, had been delivered from slavery in the Exodus, and then who had received a kingdom. And once that happens, right, their kind of national myth, their understanding of who they were and who their story was that they would just go on like that forever, you know. And then they continued to do violence. They continue to have sin. There's the threat of corruption continues to work in them.
They had a lot of bad kings.
Yeah,
Not as many bad kings as Israel, right? But
yeah.
but
there's
still a
some really bad
bunch.
ones.
like some really
Yeah,
bad ones.
yeah, and bad leadership, and then they have these twin evils of idolatry and injustice that really plague them, and God allows the Babylonians to take them into captivity. And when that happens, and this is the reason why I'm putting this on the map of the 10 moments of the biblical story. When that happens, they have to rethink who they are and rethink what it means to be God's people. Okay? So before there was songs of praise, all songs of praise. But now they have to say, wait, what does it mean that we still have suffering? And some of it is suffering for doing wrong. And some
This
of it
is
is just not.
Different than like when David writes about suffering, right? David is like a more of a personal, like this.
Yeah, the Psalms
This
kind of reflect
bad
that.
thing's happening to me, and but
Yeah.
I know God's going to deliver me. And Jeremiah is kind of writing it for like the whole nation,
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah. Well, and what happens is those lines start to blur a little bit, right? So that you have the development in Israel of literature, the literature of suffering. Okay, and God gives to the people. God gives them prophets who are able to help them re-understand their relationship with Him in the face of their great suffering. And that is a tremendous legacy of the story of God's people, right? Because it's not just a one-time thing. Like, so the Babylonians come in and then they're replaced, like after the Babylonian Empire is wiped out, the Persians come in after them, okay? After the Persians are, after the Persian Empire fades, the Greeks come in, and the Greeks, we don't really have a whole lot of what happens immediately with like the Alexander the Great, and his story with Judah. But we know that the empire after him, that the part of the post-Greek empire that takes control of the land of Judah is called the Seleucid Empire. And they have some of the most villainous emperors. Okay, so even after the people have come back from Babylon, or at least some of them do.
Well, who was it? Persia was kind of a good. They
well-
weren't terrible, right?
Right, well-
like, compared to
well-
Babylon.
So
They
there's
were
this
okay.
sense that yes, there's good and worse empires above us, but the Persians are like, yes, you can go home, and aren't we so benevolent to let you go home, right? And so yeah, we are benevolent, but make sure you pay your taxes,
Yeah,
okay, and make sure that you understand who's in.
they're not
charge.
independent,
Yes,
right? They're
that's
not
right,
allowing them to be
that's right.
independent, but they're ruling in a way where there will be less revolt.
That's right.
Probably.
Aren't you guys so blessed that we have this Persian Empire who is willing to let you now be we believe the Persian message was, hey, you know what? We believe that you have a place in the Persian Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a cheerful. It comes with a cheerful memo
Mm-hmm.
and a smiley face, okay? But it's also make sure that you send some of your troops to be a part of our army. Make sure that you pay your taxes and
Because they would wipe you out too. I mean,
oh,
if you
absolutely,
do that,
yeah, they're
pull that stuff.
absolutely,
So-
absolutely. So yes, you're right. There's good and worse, right? There are those emperors that kind of let you be, and there are emperors that are oppressing you actively, and the Seleucids are those
Oppressive.
Well, I mean, there's there's better Seleucids too, but there's worse ones. And then you have that legacy goes all the way into towards the New Testament. By the time of the New Testament, the Romans are on the scene. The Romans have kind of swept in and taken control of the remains of the Seleucid Empire, and so we see even in the New Testament, by the time we transition, the exile is really our transition point from the Old Testament into the New Testament.
Yeah, because there's another block of like no biblical writings, right? No,
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe apocrypha stuff, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no like traditional canon
Yeah,
writings.
there's a period of time between the basically the Persians and then
Yeah.
what comes later. Although personally, I see the Book of Daniel as kind of coming in this probably written in the Seleucid time frame, but that's really neither here nor there. Um, you're right. There's this gap of time. Okay, um, and when Jesus comes on the scene, the people, they're not technically an inside, like they're living in Judah, but they're living under empire, right? And so exile is something that happened at a specific moment, but the effects of it are really continuing, and they're vicious, So you have things like the the story where Herod has the children slaughtered after Jesus is born, right?
Hmm.
And in some ways, that's calling back to the Exodus
Like with
story,
Moses,
right? We
right?
talked
Yeah.
about that, yeah.
And
That
they actually
motif, that's part of that
escaped to
motif, yeah,
Egypt, right?
yeah. But that whole sense, like, when it happens in the New Testament, it's almost like, well, of course that's what happens, because that's what empires do,
Yeah.
right? That's what pharaohs and Babylonian kings and Persians, if they really want to, and like that's
Mhm.
the empires use their power um, to oppress people, and they don't really care if you're faithful to God or not, as long as you are subservient to them and competing with that.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and Jerusalem did that too. I mean,
yeah, that's
Israel
right.
did that to the peoples around it
Yeah, and
as well.
that's why they end up going into exile, right? Because they
Yeah,
use
because
their
they're
power. The kings use their
not
power
just.
to
Yeah.
do that. There would be emperors,
Yeah.
and that's, man, you're exactly right. When the kings of Israel are at their worst, they look like pharaohs,
Hmm.
right? They look like these other powers. They're powers that would be. It's the powers that are. So that's all. That's this story. Okay. Now, a lot of people, I think, of all the ones that we're talking about, Rylan, I feel like the this is why I included in my timeline. There is a disproportionate amount of ink in the Bible spilled about exile.
Hmm.
But I remember when I was first growing up and when I first learned the Bible and even into adulthood, it wasn't a part of the story that was really on my radar. It was like, we have the Exodus and we have the kingdom, we have David, and then we can kind of fast forward to
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, like the stuff about exile is Daniel,
Mhm.
and then like a bunch of weird stuff that's hard to teach kids, maybe,
Well,
or
there's all
like
this
poetry.
prophetic stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. All
It's
this.
not stories. It's not like,
That's exactly right.
Jeremiah did this or that. It's like Jeremiah writing Lamentations.
Yeah, well, and the prophets
And
do
we've
have
already decided that this is not VBS material.
yeah, right. So they do have some stories thrown
Yeah.
in, but they're even
Sure.
weirder. Like
Yeah.
the
Like
stories of
Ezekiel and
yeah,
some of that
Ezekiel and
stuff.
some of the stuff Jeremiah. I mean, they're just kind of
Like
weird stories and
Elijah and
they're hard to make
Elisha.
sense.
Elijah and Elisha they've got some awesome
There are
stories.
some,
But that
that's
is
pre-exile.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you're right. Yeah.
they're really
That's
kingdom
before.
prophets. So
Yeah.
you have these different eras of the prophets, and
So
you're
what-
right. It kind of gets messy to understand.
So Elijah is post exile. He was
No,
he
no,
he
no,
was
no,
around.
They're pre. They're in the time of like Ahab, right?
Yeah.
So
So
they're in
Lamentations
kingdom.
is
Yeah.
but Lamentations is
Jeremiah.
about
That's Jeremiah.
Oh, Jeremiah. Okay. So
Yeah.
but Jeremiah's after.
Yeah, Jeremiah lives
It's like
at
in the
time
transition
of the
period.
exile.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
When
so
it happens.
he is prophesying, hey guys, this is
It's
about
about
to
to,
happen.
yeah, okay, yeah.
And then he writes some stuff about
That's kind of
how
where I
bad it
am
has happened.
in my yearly reading of
Yeah,
the
oh,
Bible.
really?
I'm like
Really?
reading
Yeah.
through that right now, and
Well,
that
it's
I knew
confusing.
he
We'll
was
talk about
somewhere
Jeremiah
around there.
another time because
Yeah.
like Jeremiah is like somebody chopped it up and then put it back, sewed it back together. It doesn't flow sequentially, and it's very clear. It's not bashful about that, but
Yeah.
it skips around in its time frame, and you're talking about exactly part of the problem, right? Because the stuff with the exile is harder to wade into. The reason I think it's important, though, is when you skip over that story, you lose a lot of the theological resources of hope that were generated during the exile.
Yeah.
And listen, this is a very important point. I hope you'll take this to heart. Any theology that can't enter into conversation with suffering ends up being hollowed out, right? And there were a lot of people in ancient Judah that like were trying to hold out a theology that said God will save us from this. You know, nothing bad's going to happen to us. And that's part of the Jeremiah stuff. You might be already reading. And Jeremiah's like, no, you know, like
Yeah.
there really is bad stuff. And these other prophets, there's these other prophets, these false prophets that are going around saying everything's going to work.
Yeah,
out
one
just
of them makes like a
fine."
giant bull's horn or
Oh
something,
man,
and
it's a
he's like,
great
"You're
story.
gonna kill the bad king with this bull's horn and
Yes,
gore him." And
yes.
he's like, "Yeah, but what does Jeremiah think?" And Jeremiah's like, "Yeah, you're gonna do that." And the king's like, "You liar."
Yeah, that's right.
It's a good story.
Jeremiah's like wink, wink, yeah.
Yeah.
But Jeremiah is saying, no, you guys aren't taking seriously that God is going to allow this stuff to come to you.
Mhm.
You're going to have suffering, you know, and because of the great sin of the people, you know, this is going to happen. So I think that's all important, right? So one of the reasons I want to insert the exile back into our timeline as we think about it. Don't just skip. You can't just, if you just read the prophets only as, well, this is a moment where they say something that is something specific that Jesus does later, and that's the value of the prophets, is just those places where they,
Yeah.
you know, they kind of validate the story of Jesus later. And they do that, okay? There is a part of that. But the reason they're telling those prophecies to start with is because the reality of the suffering of the exile. So they're saying there's going to be a Messiah that's going to come to address all this brokenness and to address all this corruption,
Yeah.
you know, that's still present in the people. Um,
So that's the hope part of it.
yeah,
You know,
that's
the
right.
steadfast love of the Lord part of it,
That's exactly right.
and most of the rest of it is the other part that we
Yeah.
read.
But you can't just skip to it.
Yeah.
know? You can't just.
It doesn't make any sense because
That's
you know
right.
when they read it, you think of it as you put yourself in that story,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, oh, they're prophesying about this guy who's going to save my personal sin.
Yeah.
But they're prophesying about this guy who's going to get them out of exile.
You know, everybody wants to be hopeful.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody wants to be hopeful, but we don't think about this. But one of the most essential ingredients of hope is suffering. You can't have hope without suffering, right? Like if otherwise, it's just. I think things are going to continue like
you
goodness
have
forever.
like a shallow hope, you know,
Yeah,
like you know, I hope I
That's
I
right.
hope I get a a popsicle
But
later. or
biblical
whatever,
hope
you know,
says, yes, this suffering is
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
I mean, it sinks down deep, right? Biblical hope is able to say things like, um, I have become the laughing stock of all my people, the object of their taunt songs all day long. He has filled me with bitterness. He has sated me with wormwood. It's able to say that and then able to move to,
Mhm.
but I believe
Steadfast
the
love.
steadfast love of the
Yeah.
Lord, never ceases. Somehow, both of those things can be held together. Okay, well, that is this moment. So we're ready to turn now into the New Testament. We'll do that more when we come back next week. So we hope you'll join us next Wednesday night as we continue our look into the story of God. We will have more information about what's going on with Cedar Lane and our kind of return to having some physical gatherings. We want you to know that it's going to be a gradual process. So we hope that we're going to have a physical meeting here at Cedar Lane on June 7th. But we also know that that's going to be an environment where we need to practice social distancing. People are going to need to prepare to wear masks when you're here, and if you are in one of those categories that puts you in a greater vulnerability, whether because of your age or because of other health conditions, we're going to ask you to stay home for a while and follow the guidance that we've received in terms of really being careful about COVID-19. Do you know anybody that's had it, by the way? I think I'm at the place now where I know 4 people that have had this stuff.
I think one or
Yeah.
two.
And so it's a real thing, and we
Mhm.
want to make sure that we're being careful
Yeah.
and that we do this in an appropriate way as we kind of return to some other routines. So as we do that gradually, we're looking to do that in the best, safest way that we can. We're looking to make sure that we have a great experience for people that are here at the building, but also a great experience for people that are at home streaming. And we want you to know that if you're in that position where you need to stay home, then we want to encourage you to do that and not feel compelled, like out of guilt or anything like that. Like you have to be physically here. You're still a part of our community, and we're still going to do our best to serve you during that time period. Okay, so we'll still have streaming classes, and we'll still have streams for service and those sort of things too. So that being said, we are going to have a song to close tonight. Here we go. So let's transition to that last song, and that'll be it for the evening. Okay. So,
Yep. Thanks everybody for joining with us tonight.
that's right. Grace and peace.
Holy Spirit, living breath of God, breathe new life into my willing soul. Let the presence of the risen Lord come renew my heart and make me whole. Cause your word to come alive in me. Give me faith for what I cannot see. Give me passion for your purity. Holy Spirit, breathe new life in me. Holy Spirit, come abide within. May your joy be seen in all I do. Let the presence of the risen Lord come renew my heart and make me whole. Kindness to the greatest and the least, gentleness that sows the path of peace. Turn my strivings into works of grace. Breath of God, show Christ in all I do. Holy Spirit, from creation's birth, giving life to all that God has made. Show your power once again on earth. Cause your church to hunger for your ways. Let the fragrance of our prayers arise. Lead us on the road of sacrifice, that in unity the face of Christ may be clear for all the world to see.